Well, the geniuses in Geneva at the World Health Organization are giving some folks encouraging messages earlier this week about the spread of COVID-19. Take a listen.
It still appears to be rare that an asymptomatic individual actually transmits onward. We have a number of reports from countries who are doing very detailed contact tracing. They're following asymptomatic cases, they're following contacts, and they're not finding secondary transmission onward. It's very rare.
Do you follow that? Her message that the asymptomatic spread of coronavirus is very rare was a game changer to many stuck at home, ready to get out. Only problem, it's wrong. Uh-oh. The next day, the geniuses again at the WHO expert backtracks after saying asymptomatic transmission is very rare. The guidance keeps shifting. So who do we believe? Well, joining us now is economic and political commentator Trish Regan. Trish, welcome back.
Good to see you, Sean.
All right, so let's play a little ping pong here. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Masks are important, but they're not important. Socially distance, except depending on where you're going. At church, socially distance. Protests, don't socially distance. Drugs, they need to go through the proper clearance. We need to make sure we have enough time. Unless the WHO is talking about something else, then we can use small studies, and that doesn't matter. I don't know. The entire world is supposedly be hanging on the word of the WHO, and the WHO doesn't seem to be speaking with one voice.
Well, listen, I love how you and Lindsay are referring to them as geniuses. Yeah, the big old geniuses there at the WHO, which at this point seems like a pretty schizophrenic kind of organization, right? One day it's one thing, one day it's another. And so we're left questioning all of it, right? I mean, as Americans right now, here's this organization, which, by the way, we fund to the tune of nearly $1 billion a year, a lot more, by the way, than we have to. They break it down into sort of what's required that you give to the WHO and then what you donate. So we donate all this money. China, by the way, doesn't really donate much of anything. So, we're giving all this money to this organization. They can't get it right, which tells you about lousy management. But then this is sort of the real sticking point as I see it, Sean and Lindsay, is that this is an organization that feels like it is kowtowing to China right now. I mean, the Wuhan virus came out of China, we know that, in late November, early December. And yet a month later, you got the head of the WHO saying how wonderful China is, so transparent, et cetera. China was not transparent. China was actually locking up anybody who would talk about this. So I think we're left with a whole lot of questions. We're obviously doubting the scientists there and the authority which they have, or lack thereof, surrounding this entire issue. But on top of it, we're left saying, wait a second, are you in our corner or China's?
Yeah, Trish, and I think one of the ironies of this whole thing is that you have organizations like Twitter or even local businesses that are looking to the World Health Organization or to the CDC for guidance on how to open, or in Twitter's stance on their policies of what videos should be on their platform or not. And now we have both of these organizations that are showing they don't have their ducks in a row. They keep making misstep after misstep. At Shyam's point, we don't know what to trust when it says do wear a mask, don't wear a mask. So who do we look to for guidance? Who is the guiding light and the person folks should be looking to? No one knows.
My gut instinct would be, hey, wear a mask if you're worried about being sneezed on. I guess a little bit of common sense should come into play. I mean, look, the WHO, I think at this point, it has not proven itself to be especially trustworthy. And, they're sort of trying to play both sides. I understand they want a good relationship with China. I understand so many viruses do come from that part of the world, and they want to make sure that they have enough of a communication and relationship with China in order to deal with those threats. But nonetheless, you got to give us some clarity back here at home. We're the ones footing the bill. Well, right? Trish, we deserve the truth.
The funny thing is, if you're a doctor, though, to Lindsay's point, if you're a doctor and you put out a video right now questioning anything that's not in accordance with the WHO, and I guess it depends on what day it is, all of these platforms, Twitter, YouTube, whatever, are taking the video down because they don't want advice that's not consistent. Well, the problem is WHO, if it's inconsistent, then how are the platforms going to judge us? One day they put up the video, the next day they take it down because it blows with the wind. But the other people who are being inconsistent and playing both sides are politicians. They want us to socially distance. They don't want us to go to church. They don't want us to do all this. And then when it comes to protest, they want us to all go out there and say it's okay. I don't understand. I get that people have a right to protest. I get that's who we are as Americans. That's what makes us great. But how can you be a health professional or a government official to tell people this is what you need to do to be okay, except if you're doing something that's exactly that, but it happens to be what we agree with?
For sure. Once again, a total lack of consistency, right? So you're left as an American saying, wait a second, who do I trust in this situation? In the case of the WHO, you're worried about how in bed they are with China. In the case of local governments that are prohibiting people from being out there, just on the playground or going to church, but simultaneously allow people to stand shoulder to shoulder and march in these protest movements, it doesn't make any sense. Again, like sort of our gut check on these things. It's like, okay, guys, I get it. If you want us to be really, really careful and you don't want us to be around each other, why are you going to allow it for these protests? It's, again, total lack of consistency, which leads people down the path of saying, wait a second, is this being done for political purposes? Just as people question the WHO in China, they're questioning the Democrat Party and why it is that it's okay to protest, but it's not okay to play on the playground.
Trish, it's not just hypocritical, it's dangerous. It's dangerous because these health officials talked about the dangers of what would happen if we were in a group, how COVID could resurrect itself. But here's the thing that really upsets me, is that we heard for a while how this disease was disproportionately affecting the African-American community, how there were all of these problems with it and we needed to address it. And then these protests that have come up about racial justice and policing, where a large number of African Americans are going together, that would be a thing that we would want to double down and say, hey, you have a right to protest, go out there, get your voice heard, but be careful. And instead, they're encouraging them. It's not a binary choice. You can still protest and you can socially distance and do that, but they won't warn them. And this is unbelievable because it's now dangerous to the very people that they talked about wanting to protect just a few days ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Totally hypocritical. You know, one person said it well, that this is effectively almost like a biological weapon, if you would, if you believe, right, what they're telling us about the seriousness of this. And then you have hundreds of thousands of people marching in the streets, shoulder to shoulder. Isn't that kind of like some kind of weapon? I mean, again, I think people are looking at it and they're saying, hey, you know, you told us one thing, you permit another. Why is that? Why is that? I mean, I think it's worthwhile for people to ask these questions right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Trish. And I actually got out there with some protesters who we're going to show later and ask them some of this stuff, if they were concerned or not. Many of them were. It's so good to see you. Thank you for coming on with us.
Good to see you. Thank you both.
All right. Well, with police being targeted with protests, defunding threats, and police reform, does the police force need to change their message to help improve their reputation? Dick Morris is here to help us discuss. We'll be right back.